Episode 284, Vagaries of the Weather. This is The Change Underground. I'm your host, John Moore. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. And my cup runneth over. A big thank you to Jay and an individual known only as Someone who made use of the Buy Me a Coffee link at the website and or in the show notes. These gestures are gratefully accepted and much appreciated. The dry spell, the hot dry spell that defines our Mediterranean climate here in northwestern Tasmania, normally arrives around mid to late January. It lasts from 2 to 8 weeks. This year it arrived in December, about the 3rd, and has just broken on the 5th of January. I planted the seed stock for the blue corn on the afternoon of the 3rd of December and 24 mils dropped that night. We haven't had any rain since then until early this week. And the corn plants have emerged and are growing away quite nicely. Having had a really wet spring, there was plenty of soil moisture and the plants have grown well. The dry spell broke with 46 mils. That's almost 2 inches in the old money. And we've had drizzly soft weather ever since. During those 5 weeks of dryness, grasses flowered, hay fever reactions skyrocketed. I managed to cut the spelt using a Korean sickle, but picking up the cut spelt triggered real breathing difficulties when I wasn't snoozing my head off. It took a few days to realise what was different this year. We had no raw local honey in the house. Managed to track some down and it's like caramel in texture and taste. Only 2 days of a teaspoon of this stuff every couple of hours and the symptoms were gone. The forecast for the 46 mils was that it would arrive overnight on the 5th. Necessity being the mother of invention, rather than collecting the grain, I just threshed it into the trailer for the ride-on mower. Took me all day and most of the twilight, but I did finish, pushing the trailer into the shed as the first drops of rain hit the corrugated iron roof. It's all about timing, as they say in the comedy business. A second and third threshing are in the offing before winnowing, but for now the crop is safe. The question remains though, was that our hot dry summer or is another dry spell coming? None of the older locals can say for sure. Half say that was it for summer and the other half think it was just a warm-up. Time will tell. Either way, I move on to cover crops. The blue corn will stay on the ground until the first frost to ensure its ripeness, and the rest of the growing areas I'll be putting down to covers. I'm looking for a frost-tender grass species I can overseed with clover. White clover probably, but maybe some strawberry or a mix. This clover should be well and truly established by next spring-summer for strip planting blue corn into. And from what I've seen on YouTube, there's a link in the show notes, the corn establishes before the clover overruns it, and the inter-row clover acts as a living mulch. Once the corn is harvested, the clover re-establishes quickly, and the soil remains covered for the year, minus a few weeks in a small area of the clover as the corn establishes. This might be a thing for the EU, where corn growing has particularly tight regulations. The YouTube video I watched was from the US. So vast areas of soil are covered with plastic sheeting, and this was a thing I saw in County Cork in the summer of 2018. Bare soil being prohibited under EU regulations, I guess. And apparently the rules are changing and the plastic will be banned. I think that's a good idea. Never really keen on putting plastic under soil. The living clover mulch is a better idea, but it's not my area of expertise, so I'll just throw the idea out there. What to use as the pre-clover cover crop to smother out everything else? Well, the oats I used last winter smothered everything. I was really impressed. Oats, though, are not bothered by frosts. They seem to thrive on them. Some sort of sorghum might work. I'm sure the buckwheat will as well. But finding sorghum seeds in a sufficiently small amount for my needs on the island of Van Diemen's Land is a problem. Bringing any cereal into Tassie is a biosecurity nightmare, and the supplies here are all hybrid. But given that I'll not be saving the seed to replant, it's a one-off thing. The idea is to create a mass of organic matter to collapse onto the surface to feed the clovers and cover them, and give them something to grow through. It probably won't matter if they're hybrids, I guess. Of the oats I mentioned above, I did harvest enough to cover my seed inputs so that I've got enough there to regrow them if I need to. And they're sitting very nicely in stooks at present, awaiting the threshing and winnowing. The rest I left standing in the paddock for the chooks and the ducks. And it was interesting to see both species picking their seeds from the stalks. After they'd done their stripping job, I slashed the remainder. And a really very nice amount of mulch on the soil and some deepish roots too were the results. I did have to dig to find out about the roots, but only a very small patch. I suspect the spelt, which grew much more vigorously above ground, would have done so underground as well. So there's that. We're opening up and getting things down into the soil. On the matter of the spelt, as discussed back in episode 260, the technology of the culture domesticating a grain had an influence on the outcome produced. Having harvested patches of maize and corn in the past, it is a very pleasant activity. It is at a human scale, and while more fun with others, it is not difficult to do as a solo harvester. Spelt and the oats too are a different kettle of fish. Hand threshing the spelt over the edge of the trailer I used with the mower was a repetitive, mind-numbing exercise. Knowledge that the day and evening I was doing it was my absolute last chance before rain did add a sense of purpose and occupation and reason for doing it. But really, it was not a satisfying process. And I came to the conclusion that the whole process was designed to use temple slaves, edge-of-starvation peasants, or until 1865 Russian serfs, especially at the scale I'm doing it. At larger scales, machinery makes plenty of sense, but not always in a climate sense. I know maize is now subject to the same machinery types, but its initial domestication in a culture without wheeled vehicles or draft animals created a very different seed head. Maybe that's all humans were ever going to wrangle out of teosinte, the original grain, but maybe not. It is certainly better suited to my way of thinking and doing. I might also point out that the maize pollen has never triggered hay fever like the old world grasses do. That might just be me, and n=1 is not a great data set to base conclusions upon, but I report it for your consideration. Only time will tell if we're in for any more dry Mediterranean summer spells this summer. The weather is in a La Nina cycle at the moment because of warmer temperatures in the Western Pacific compared to the Eastern Pacific, with increased rains on the eastern half of the mainland of Australia and droughts over in Peru. An El Nino pattern is always just around the corner, and it means droughts on the mainland here and rain in Peru. And droughts on the mainland mean fires. I'm hopeful of a continued La Nina, but not expecting it to carry on much past summer this year. I hope things are growing well where you are as we enter this new year of 2022. We still live in interesting times, so make sure you have a little or a lot of food growing insurance near at hand. Another big thank you to Jay and the individual known only as Someone for the coffees. They are really appreciated. And you know the drill. If you need help growing, there's a free ebook at the World Organic News website, and the No Dig gardening course is there too, and the links are in the show notes. Decarbonise the air, recarbonise the soil. Thank you all for listening, and I'll be back next week.